Hola.
Hello, and welcome you all, the ones that are here and everybody that are following us through the streaming, through the website. Well, first of all, turn your mobile phones off because they always ring at the worst moment. So, well, if you want to mention anything about the speech in social media, etc., to upload any picture, you have the hashtag here. And if you want to put it pensar in fútbol, with the ad Espacio FTEF. Well, we have here Simon Critchley. He studied philosophy, but he doesn't want to be called philosopher, but a person that teaches philosophy. And he is a great author of the 21st century. He has written very different pieces, like for example the book of Dead Philosophers, or for example an essay about David Bowie. He's a very eclectic, and he is looking, he's trying to put philosophy close to popular things. But the most important thing, he has a religion that is called Liverpool. So, in her last work, that is called What We Think About When We Think of Soccer, it's a fascinating book. I'm sure that many of you have already read it. If you haven't done it, you can have it after the speech. It's able to put a language to many things that football supporters feel, but we didn't know how to call them. So Simon is compiling both passions in this book that can be, well, this is the ball of this match that we're going to play here this afternoon. But for that, we need at least two people. So, apart from Simon, we have Santiago Segurola, who is a role model in the sports journalism in this country. Simon, in his book, says that 25 years ago, it was impossible to take philosophy close to football because it was considered as something vulgar, so to speak. But this has changed thanks to writers like Eduardo Galeano, Vázquez Montalbán here in Spain, and thanks to journalists like, for example, Santiago Segurola, because his reports changed the language that is mentioned in the book. People didn't want to write reports about football. They wanted to write like Santiago Segurola. Oh yeah, thank you for that. So we have two players. We have the ball, and I will be the referee. So I hope to make a good job, not to have any yellow card. And I would like to start with the title of the book. What do we think about when we think of soccer, if it is possible to answer this question?
Right, hello. Hola. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Santiago, and thank you to Sexto Piso for making this happen, and very happy to be here. Which is a way of not answering the question. To tell the truth, it wasn't my idea for a title. It was my editor's idea. So I disavow any responsibility for the title of the book.
¿Cómo querías
What was your title?
My title was Working Class Ballet. Or it could have been football, philosophy, or something like that. But so the title is a play on a Murakami essay about running, which is a play on a short story by Raymond Carver on love. So it's a play, so it's fine as a title. But one thing that's been, I'm not writing a philosophy of football in the sense in which if philosophy is a series of kind of abstractions, concepts, ideas, and we have up here and football is down here as a kind of a dirty, lowly phenomenon. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to what I'm trying to do is to describe the lived experience of football and what happens in the minds, in the bodies of fans and players when they play and when they watch. And so the book is really an attempt to provide a poetics of football, a set of kind of formal thoughts which make explicit what fans understand already. So fans, and a main point I'm making in the book is that being a football fan is at one level really stupid. It's really dumb to watch 22 men or women in shorts running around after a ball. On the other hand, it's an extraordinary activity of intelligence and rationality. And so what I'm trying to show is that within that phenomenon, the lived experience of football, something extraordinary happens, which is about the experience of play and what happens when we play. Because we are, what are human beings? Human beings are beings that play. We play with ourselves, we play with other people, we engage in playful activity. And that play, which for me is expressed most powerfully in the phenomenon of football, is something which is neither explained through the contents of our minds, right? It's not a subjective phenomenon, and it's not explained scientifically. It's not explained as an objective phenomenon. It's somewhere in the middle. And what I'm trying to do is to get into that space of play that we experience when we watch a game or when we play a game, and to try and describe what takes place. That's what I'm trying to get close to. That lived experience is what I'm trying to do in the book. If that helps.
Santi, para ti...
Well, Santi, for you, is it possible to explain what do we think of when we think of football, of soccer? You've read Simon's book. What has been your main takeaways? Well, first of all, the play. This way of playing takes us to our childhood. I'm quite old, but I can't stop thinking as a kid when I think of football. And the fascination that football has comes from this time. It's not rational, but I keep that doses of irrationality with football. But it is about learning the need that we human beings have of being in touch with game, with any type of game. This part is absolutely necessary for our lives. At least that's my opinion. And this is what, at least to me, and I think that to millions of people, that this has given us the feeling that football is something important. If the game is important, football, that is the most important of the games, it's very important both to me and to millions of people. And in my opinion, at least to me, it's a constant way back to happiness, and happiness is childhood. It's true that football is dressed with many contradictions because it has different characteristics. First of all, it is such a big universe that it can be observed from any angle, from the most simple to the most pervert one, from the smarter to the most stupid one. But this is life, this is football, and this is why football is a metaphor of life, because it embraces everything. It is a part that defines football too. And another thing that defines football, it's like a chameleon. This is a game that comes, I don't know where, from I don't know when. It was regulated by English people. It was sent all over the world, but it was sent in the middle of the end of the 19th century, and we are on the 21st century. We've been playing football for almost 150 years, and I haven't seen any sport or any human activity that has adapted to all technological, social, economic changes in global terms like football has done. I mean, this was the neighborhood sport. It came to be the province sport, the nation sport, the continent sport, and after that the global sport. And it was growing when technological phenomena appeared, like for example the neighborhood newspaper, after that the national newspaper, after that the radio station, TV channels, internet, and so on. So it is a very old game, but the capacity to adapt to every change, social changes, technological changes, I mean, the capacity has been amazing. So the only thing that I'm concerned about now is that this variety of changes that have taken place can end up with the football essence. I mean, I'm starting to think that football has been so successful because it's quite a simple game with not many rules. You know it, Simon. And however, I have the feeling that we want to make it as if we were in the US. I mean, that idea of stopping the games, I don't want to use that VAR system, this new system that is going to be implemented. Football is fluent by nature. It's not like basketball, like handball, that have, for example, 24 seconds of possession. No, that's not the point. Football occupies space and time as every team, coach, or player wants. And the fact of having out interventions from people that are out of the pitch, out of the grass, is a matter of concern to me, because I think that if we want to have true justice, we would have to stop every play. Football is full of injustices. I mean, we can't determine what's the biggest one of all in order to stop a game, because the others are important in football. So this is why I'm concerned about all these out interventions that are a little bit defined by this US strand, that are influenced by money and by people that don't understand football as a game but as a business, and that is important for supporters. I'm starting not to be a supporter, I'm starting to be a consumer, and they are treating me as a consumer, and I'm further away from football, because this is a very rational feeling. Well, Simon, in his book, defends this football, the one that is close to the grass, the one that you can smell, you can touch, the one that is close to the supporters, for the supporters that are there, but you criticize that it is some kind of, everything that has to do with capitalism, with business, and all these things that are ending up with all this.
What Santiago said is very good. He first used to say something about childhood and memory, and for many of us, for me, and for many people, what is it that connects together a life, right? And what is it that connects together this life that we're living now with the life of people that preceded us and the life of people that will come after, ancestors and a kind of afterlife. And football has that. I mean, I'm sure in this room people have their own stories, and Santiago was just telling me his story about his father and football. It's the only thing I could talk about sensibly with my father, rationally, for more than 3 minutes was football. And as a young child, I was equal to him if I knew what I was talking about, if I did my homework. So there's a kind of equality that football gives. And it also means that there's a memory of one's own childhood, but also with this book, one thing I've been doing, which has been great, has been going into schools and talking to school children about football. And in New York City, you talk to school children about football, they know everything about Real Madrid, less about Atletico Madrid, less about Atletico Bilbao, but they know, they have the shirts and they have their teams, and and they're on an equal basis to someone like me who's older. And there's something about football which is about nostalgia, childhood, the past, and this deep sense of belonging and one's identity, one's place. I think football is a kind of polytheistic religion, right? In the sense in which I'm a Liverpool supporter, I have my stories.
You're a chosen one.
Yeah, I have my gods, I have my myths, and I have my sacred place and my rituals, and so do you, right? And you have your gods, I have my gods, you have your gods. People have their gods. My gods are my gods, and your gods are your gods. I don't want to kill you because you believe in your gods. I might think that my gods are better than your gods, and I do. Liverpool's gods are the best gods. But there's a kind of polytheistic toleration here where I deeply, passionately believe in my team, and yet, as we were saying before, the game last Saturday between Liverpool and Real Madrid, which is very painful for me to watch. You have to acknowledge rationally that Real Madrid were a better team, better structure, better players, better organised, stronger, and that's something that doesn't happen in politics. That doesn't happen in philosophy. Nobody ever changes their mind in philosophy. So that's interesting. There's something about football in relationship to money, capitalism, and all the rest. And on the one hand, football has developed, I think, in interesting ways. Has the internet been good for humanity or not? Question mark. I don't know. But it's been good for football in the sense in which the amount of football discussion and the level of sophistication of football discussion is extraordinary. And football has developed in relationship to a new technology. Now, the strange thing about football is that it's on the one hand, it stays the same. It's the same game that was played 150 years ago. On the other hand, things have changed dramatically. Does that mean that the game is under threat? I don't know. I find the World Cup fairly hard to look forward to, because the governing structure of football, FIFA, is a corrupt body which has been working to kind of destroy football in many parts of the world. I think its influence in a place like Africa has been terrible. So there's something about what I try to say in the book is that football is a source of delight, a source of pleasure. We get time off from our lives. We get to enjoy something that we know about, and when we're watching it, we feel we know what's happening. We know the players. We know we're experts. And at the other level, football is horrifying. It disgusts us. All the worst aspects of contemporary capitalism are on display in football. So I think being a football fan is something which you cannot really feel good about football all the time. And that's also a complicated thing. Let's take an example of a team, Manchester City. Manchester City, always the second club in Manchester. Manchester United, the big global brand with a strong local association to the city, had been a successful team, fallen on hard times. Foreign money comes in from Sheikh Mansour. They begin to buy players, get a good coach, and now they have Guardiola. They have an extraordinary team. So look at Manchester City as a phenomenon. We have money, we have capitalism, we have, as it were, all that we worry about in the world. At the same time, there's a strong local fan culture. There is someone, Guardiola, who's trying to build a certain vision of how football should be played, and a team which is very exciting to watch. So I think when we experience football, we experience all those contradictions about the world. I agree with you about VAR. I think VAR is it's a disaster. Football is not basketball. It's not baseball. It's not American football. It's about flow. Yeah. It's about movement. It's about, and you give yourself over to that movement and you watch the play happen. This idea of this stop-start issue in the name of justice, I think is ridiculous, right?
This is justice and justice.
Yeah. Football is, as a Liverpool fan, what Sergio Ramos did to Mohamed Salah on Saturday night.
What do you think about that?
I think there should be a criminal prosecution of Sergio Ramos. But it's part of the game. It's part of the game. It's, on the other hand, it's a skillful piece of defensive play. You have a team, not the best team in the world, but my team, and you identify their best player and you take them out of the game after 25 minutes.
Last year was the same with Dybala.
Yeah.
If you remember the Real Madrid-Juventus final, la primera acción.
The first action of the match was, I think that minute 10, 11, Sergio Ramos with Dybala. Dybala disappeared of the game. He was substituted in the second half, but this was responsibility of the category of Sergio Ramos, because of his presence, his capacity that he has to modify things. I truly admire Sergio Ramos. And out of everything that Simon has said, there are two things. Well, my father was a football player, semi-professional football player, when the semi-professionalism did not exist in Spain. The players from the Basque Country were really prestigious, and before the Civil War, they were picked from the different teams around Bilbao, and if they were relatively good, but not good enough to play in Athletic de Bilbao or in Arenas de Quecho, many of them ended up playing at different places of Spain. My father went to Granada and to Cadiz. He played on the team that was before Cadiz after the national Spanish War. My father was 45 when I was born, and he was at the Spanish Civil War. He was on holiday when the Civil War started. He joined the National Basque Party, and 3 months after, he was lame and he was almost dead because of all the wounds and all the injuries that he had suffered during the war. His life changed dramatically. He moved from being a happy player in Andalusia to be a worker in Baracaldo, to go through very difficult times through all his life. And I was born very, very late. So my relationship with a man that had been happy, etc., the relationship of a kid with this person made sense just if we spoke of what made us come together, and that was football. And thanks to football, I was able to connect to someone that when I was 5 years old, he was 50. So you just have to imagine that. So to me, football was a way of salvation in order to communicate to a person that was old and that had that relationship. I had my relationship with football, and he had his relationship too, an adolescent, teenager relationship, etc. So we had story that's very important in my life, of course. I won't explain these things to people, but football is very important to many people. It is for me. And the second aspect, when he says that he's a Liverpool fan, I don't know if all teams, but there are some teams, and I think that you mentioned that in your book, that feel like that there's some kind of fate that make them a singular. Is that's true? You read it on the book? And Liverpool is one of those teams. Generally speaking, all supporters of all teams feel that their team is something special. But there are some teams that feel that have some fate. For example, one of is Real Madrid. Real Madrid has the feeling that there's a fate. He won the first edition of Champions League, and he thinks that this tournament belongs to it. It's a belief that makes it win more tournaments that they would deserve. But this is part of Real Madrid's essence, and I think it's amazing. In fact, Real Madrid spent 32 years without winning that Champions League between 1966 and 1998. And however, people in Real Madrid thought that that tournament belonged to them after 32 years. This is why they've won it so many times after that, because it was like their Bible, so to speak. Liverpool has some fate too. They were a good team, but really, their story is quite brief, so to speak. The history of Liverpool starts in 1959, but that's a real story. When Bill Shankly came to 58, maybe came from Huddersfield, he became the coach of Liverpool. They went to the first division, and after that, this Liverpool that promotes to first division appears at the same time as the pop with the Beatles, with all the pop phenomenon, and this is what was happening in the United Kingdom, and with the intuition that Bill Shankly had in order to see that times were changing, to understand that time, and to convey that enthusiasm to a team, to their people, through a very particular style. Because against of what we could think, Liverpool was very different compared to the rest of the British teams. They played in passing game. It's a way that was very weird that moment in time, that was left away in the 70s. They didn't play that way anymore, but Liverpool still did that. There's a very beautiful story of John Toshak that speaks about Liverpool, saying that when he came to Liverpool, he asked Bill Shankly what he had to do, and Bill Shankly said, you get the ball, you control it, and you pass it. You take the ball, you control and pass and move. And in the end, and players said, but how do we have to move? And he said, I don't care. The important thing is to get the ball, to control it, to pass it, and to move. You will be found. Okay, if you don't know how to do this, you can't play in Liverpool. Well, Liverpool had very special characteristics as a team. It was the first big English team that was important in Europe, although Manchester 50 years ago, it was the anniversary the day before yesterday, it was 50 years there was the anniversary of the first victory of Liverpool 4-1 against Benfica. But Liverpool had special feelings, and these special feelings came, well, I don't know if you agree on this, but they came because of the crisis of the 70s, because of the Thatcher decisions regarding the industrial process and mining process, because of the link between Liverpool and the city and that team as a representative of defending the values of the working class, because of the Habsburg tragedy. all these things make that for the good and for the bad things, Liverpool feels like they have some kind of fate. So this is why he is a chosen one, because there are some teams. For example, Barcelona has that too. Barcelona, they say that it's more than a team, and they believe in that. So obviously, these type of signs of identity are very important in football. And as regards a different question that Simon has mentioned, and I think it's a little bit concerning, is that I think that the football supporters are being, people are lying to them. Supporters like football, but they're a little bit naive. I mean, they like football, but they can be lied. And they can be used. I mean, when I say that the supporter has become a consumer, I mean that the Arab oligarchs and etc. are interested in having a market, but they know how to sell that product. And the product is that, well, they are selling a very eye-catching product for that naiveness, for that feeling, that need that supporters have of being related to that mythical territory that is football. But I think that the owners of new football are not naive at all, and I think that's a matter of concern, because I have the feeling that although it's a global phenomenon, for example, I think that Spain has a very good league. I mean, Renfe and the Spanish league, I think that we've done a great job there. But now when we are seeing that we are building a football for 12 or 15 clubs, powerful clubs that have nothing to do with daily life, with that neighborhood that we were mentioning before, to be honest, that's a matter of concern to me. Of course, Zenit of St. Petersburg is going to be successful because they are in touch with Gazprom and computing. It will be very important that Paris Saint-Germain has an owner from Qatar. It will be very important that big cities in Europe structure their football models and economic models. But what about general football? For example, football in Bilbao, Valencia, Seville, La Coruña, Brighton, Dortmund, that is not a capital city. What's going to happen with all these footballs? Because we're conveying the idea that just 1% can be successful and rich, and the rest have to accept that. I think that that's a matter of concern. And we have the feeling that as a supporter is naive, and they buy all these ideas, these Hollywood ideas of the stars, money, etc. I mean, it's easy to lie to those supporters. So I'm worried that this whole relationship can be affected. Well, in your book, Simon, you defend football as socialism that is not based on individualities. You defend that the supporters are the main part of football because they play for them to look, and they are the music. Because a game at an empty pitch is not the same. I would like to ask you, Simon, regarding the Champions final, from the point of view of philosophy, how is it possible to, someone that has failed, like Karius failed, how can he recover from that?
We were talking about this earlier, and Loris Karius needs 10 years of strict Freudian psychoanalysis, probably with an Argentinian Freudian analyst, and he needs a very good doctor to give him the best possible drugs that money can buy, and then have to hope that things get better, because the man was so alone when the final whistle last Saturday. It was painful, and it was Real Madrid players that went over to him to console him, because the Liverpool players didn't know what to do. Because you watch those mistakes, you know, you throw the ball out to Benzema, you know, it's a shot from Gareth Bale. Okay, the ball is moving, but You know, it's elementary, it's inexplicable. And I think when he went to the crowd after the Liverpool, and we dominated the stadium. We dominated that stadium with music, with the songs. How many fans we had in the stadium. But when he went to the fans to plead for forgiveness, he kind of just did his hand in his hands. It was painful to see that. And I think, obviously, the right thing to say is it's the team and nobody gets blamed and everybody takes responsibility. But still, and this is where, I love Jürgen Klopp.
Le dedicas un capítulo, de hecho.
There's a chapter to him.
I do, and I think Klopp is an interesting man because of his values, his internationalism, his belief in God, which is quite interesting. This is a person with a profound religious commitment. But it's been clear for 3 years that Liverpool need a goalkeeper.
Yes.
And we have...
No me dirás porque el Liverpool...
Well, Liverpool has a quite weird story in terms of goalkeepers. I remember that the first time that I saw a goalkeeper moving on the line as he was having a heart arrest, it was Grovelard. You remember at the final against Rome in Rome, he started to move like a clown on the line, but it worked. Do you remember that David James was a very, very extravagant goalkeeper? It has to do with your style to have this type of goalkeepers.
When I was a child called Tommy Lawrence.
He has just died.
He just died. Who used to be called the Flying Pig.
Yeah.
The Flying Pig, because when he went to save a goal, he looked like a flying pig. And so we've got, Ray Clements is the last maybe great goalkeeper we had. Pepe Reina was good. But so that's a managerial question. You know, we need a goalkeeper. Klopp didn't buy a goalkeeper because he believes that he can build something out of this team, these players that he's got. And you can do that for a certain period of time, and then we confronted a superior team. So yeah, it's very sad. But what does football teach you? It teaches you about losing, right? It's this beautiful game. It's whatever.
Por eso, Simon, yo creo que...
This is why, Simon, I think that the coaches that have played football lose better than coaches that have never played top-level football, like, for example, Mourinho. He doesn't know how to lose. Or Bielsa, he suffers a lot when he loses because they have never played top-level football. But Ancelotti, Zidane, Guardiola are players that have lost and that have won a lot. But they know what defeat is. So no matter how painful it is, they digest it much better. I think that there's a learning. And I mean, it seems that in current football, the defeat is not tolerated, and defeat is something inherent to football. Now it seems that you can't lose, especially for big teams, but it's impossible. It's something that has to do with game.
Football is, you know, there are however many teams in the league, 20 teams in the Premier League, and 19 of those teams are not going to win. Your team is going to lose. So this love and this passion and this intelligence that we give to football is about loss and defeat and disappointment, and learning to accept that. You are not going to be a success necessarily. You are not going to be able to live your dream. You can try really hard and things are just going to go badly wrong for you. This is what life is like, right? And But that's not the worst thing. The worst thing about football is not disappointment, it's hope, right? And this is very interesting, you know, philosophically, that after finishing watching the game on Saturday, I was sitting with my son in his place in South London, and we weren't speaking much, we were drinking a lot, but we couldn't get drunk because it was impossible to get drunk when things are so bad. So we just sat there, and then he said, you know, next time, ha ha ha, next time, ha. But that's a joke, but it's true, next time. And you can feel that at this point, what is it, June the 1st, that awful hope is creeping into our minds. Some of you are thinking about, how will Spain do in the World Cup? You can think, well, I love Spain, I hate Spain, I despise, whatever, you can think this, but, and I hate England, I despise the country I'm from, for the reasons that Santiago was saying about Thatcher and class, and Liverpool is a city which is in England but not of England, it's something else, it's a kind of Anglo-Irish some implant, anyway, it's like Marseille or something like that in France, and but still hating the English national team as much as I do, and they are terrible, and they've won every qualifying game, and you know what's going to happen. We will beat Panama, we will lose to Belgium, we'll draw with Tunisia, we'll get to the second round, maybe we'll get through, and then we'll be Portugal or Argentina, and we'll lose on penalties. You know this is going to happen, but still you hope. That hope is what is so awful about football, that still you hope. Now, what I don't know is, from a Spanish perspective, I think it's a question for Santiago, how that looks from a Spanish perspective, because football was a game codified in Britain, developed, but if you look at the relationship now between England and Spain in terms of football over the last 30 years, it's fascinating. England is a Spanish colony, right? And English football fans recognise that the game has been taken to a different level in this country, in all of the different forms that it's taken. And won the World Cup, European Cup. I wonder what it feels like to win like that, although 2014 was a mess. But
well, Simon, I think two things. First, la primera es que...
Here's two things. Well, first of all, I was really interested on something that appears on the book, and that's that game is a game, but you have to play it seriously. That's the first thing. And after that, football is something that is part of our irrationality. And you speak about your personal experience of all your fears, of all the fears that you have when your teams play, or about the feeling that they are going to win always. My relationship with Athletic de Bilbao is quite losing, I mean, but we have been close to a title, and I've been able to watch these games. I remember that when we won the first league after 27 years, I had never seen that. In year 1983, the Athletic won the league. The last part had to be won in Las Palmas, and Real Madrid didn't have to win in Valencia. I was so scared that I went to cinema. And I've done that many times. I admit that when the game is very serious for the Athletic and I don't have to work, I usually go to the theater because I'm really scared, and I have the feeling that if I watch it and I listen to it, Athletic is going to lose. So these things happen to supporters. Yeah, Simon speaks about superstitions, and these are superstitions that, from the rational point of view, are quite stupid. And I reproach that to myself, but I can't help it. I have such a bad time and I think that I'm offering a very bad luck to my team, so I go to the theater, as if that was going to have an influence over Vignati or Echeverria. But I calm down myself. And there's another concept that he develops, that it is what you're saying. This is the present marked by emotion. Everything can happen, although it's not habitual, but it happens. That this sensitive ecstasy that's much better than orgasm. When it happens, it happens. So it doesn't happen many times, so that's unforgettable, and that's the point. But I was interested on the idea that many English people have about their national team, that it's not very good. But nostalgia and memory of football, for example, the English national team won the 1966 World Cup. That's the only thing they won. They haven't won any Euro Cup, any World Cup after that. But there's something funny. They sell nostalgia very good. And I think that's very important in life. I'm not against nostalgia, but I don't know how many people we have here with more than 50 years. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And however, English people say that it seems that the World Cup that they won was yesterday. And young supporters, for example, 22 years ago, in 1996, all supporters were wearing the Bobby Moore t-shirt as if they had watched that final in 1966. And I think that they're going to use the same colors as in 1966, the same t-shirts, and the new supporters that were born, they are millennials, they believe that England won the World Cup yesterday, and they won it in 1966. That capability that English people have, not memory but nostalgia, to make it such an important engine in their lives, has to do with the empire, has to do with the moment when they were dominating the world. And I think that is fascinating. I think that England is the best country with this. And as regard Spain, all the bad things that England has gone through in football have happened with Spain too, but without winning anything. So what we've done in Spain is to have an identity, a very important identity during the last 10 or 15 years, the Spanish football in general, and that was to discover something that make Spanish football singular, so to speak, conviction. And Spanish football conviction, I think that this is very important, is the ball. Technique. The fact of being smart, the fact of being intelligent. For example, Italian teams have been defensive, and they say, why can't we be as defensive as we used to be? Because we're not winning. In Spain, we didn't have any style. Suddenly, we have found a style that doesn't have a rival. You can either win or lose, but there's no rival, not even Brazil. It's a different thing. And I think that's very important. Spain has offered to the world an identity and an heterodox identity, because we thought that football was going to the physical side through the organization side. I'm not saying that we are not well structured, but nobody thought that it would have to do with technique, with being intelligent, with that magical relationship with the ball. I think that is countercultural, so to speak. Football was going to that side, and Spain went to the other side, and Spain won. And that's what I think, at least. Okay, so we are about to finish. We're going to open the Q&A session, so think about what you want to ask Simon or Santi. I would like to start, because reading your book, I thought, Simon says that there can't be any more present than football, and there are 2 chapters for Zidane. So I've asked you before if the coach Zidane, because you speak about the player Zidane, you speak about Velasquez, you compare a picture of Velasquez with Zidane. do you think that both Zidanes are at the same level, the coach and the player?
Yes. Yes. I think it was an amazing thing he did yesterday. Amazing thing. To walk away. To know when to walk away. To know when to stop. I mean, who says that? Stanley Cavell says that. The philosopher, American philosopher Stanley Cavell. That thinking and to an extent living is about knowing when to end, knowing when to stop. And the problem with football, because the people that play it are so young and they want to carry on because they have a passion for it, is they can't stop. The problem with Arsene Wenger in Arsenal the last years, he couldn't stop. He should have stopped. And it damaged his reputation, although he's a brilliant manager and a very dignified human being. But what Zidane has done is amazing, you know, to do that, he ended up as manager because Rafa Benitez was pushed out. I like Rafa Benitez because he was a Liverpool manager. He still lives in Liverpool. And Zidane took the job and did what he did. And there's a kind of composure with Zidane, a kind of measure and a distance, which for me, in the book I talk about this essay by Jean-Philippe Toussaint called La Mélancolie de Zidane, Zidane's Melancholy. And what happened in 2006 was when Zidane was shown the red card in Berlin, it wasn't the red card, it was the black card of melancholy. And then when you watch Zidane leave the pitch, arguably the greatest player in the world at that point, the world kind of collapses around him, and he's the loneliest, this lonely character. There's a melancholy there, and I see the same melancholy in him as a coach. He's sure there's a joy. He's happy that Real Madrid has won, but there's a sense in which he knows this has got to end. There's a deeper, darker truth to life. And so I think I see Zidane as a kind of philosophical figure, actually. And the movie, there's this movie, which if you've not seen it, then please watch it, because it's wonderful, called Zidane, Un portrait du 21e siècle. Zidane, Portrait of the 21st Century, by Douglas Gordon and Philippe Parreno. And it's 24 cameras on Zidane at the Bernabeu against Villarreal in 2005. And there's a commentary from Zidane, and it's very beautiful. And he talks about the feeling of being outside himself when he's playing, and how his senses are alive, and when he's playing he can hear, he's in the Bernabeu, he can hear somebody talking, 100 meters away. He can see all of his senses are completely turned on, and he's completely there and outside of himself. And at the same point, he's this completely commodified figure. There he is with his Siemens advertisements and his Adidas shirt and all of the commodification of being a Real Madrid player. But there's something about the solitude of Zidane, which I find very compelling.
Simon, hablando de Zidane.
Well, speaking about Zidane, the fascination that we had when he was a player was extraordinary. I think that his category as a player is incredible. I mean, we can have a good coach, but we are fascinated by players. There's something in melancholy. I believe on this melancholy that you've mentioned, there's some capacity of seduction, if you want, and it has worked for him both as a coach and as a player. The coach that we've seen in Zidane and that we didn't know has been as seductive as the Zidane player, but with one difference to me, and this is that in this movie, the two great games of Zidane, one in Real Madrid, another one in national team, was against Villarreal, it's in the movie, and the World Cup final in Berlin 2006 against Italy, and the famous aggression to Materazzi. In both cases, they were terrible finals because he was sent off in both finals. And what I've liked of these resignation is that he has chosen his fate, a non-dramatic fate. And I think that maybe he was thinking that as a coach he was going to have another dramatic fate, maybe losing the final against Liverpool, but that would have meant to be fired, and at a new season with players that 20 minutes after ending the game were complaining, Cristiano and Bale. And I think it has been amazing because he's far away from what happened against Villarreal in that last game with Real Madrid and with the France national team in Italy. Against Italy, he has chosen a glorious fate. And I'm very happy for that.
Bueno, pasamos a...
It's also the thing which is that there's also the thing about football is that a player like Zidane there's a violence there. There's a violence, there's a melancholy, there's an inwardness, but there's a violence to Zidane. And one of the perplexing thing about players, some great players, is they're great players, but this is always at the edge of some violence, extraordinary violent feelings. And the one that, my favourite is Luis Suarez. I love Suarez. He's my kind of player. You know, he's not technically the best player. He's not the fastest player. He's not the most gifted player. But if you're picking a team, the first name has got to be Luis Suarez, I think, because he's going to make your team win. But with that comes this extraordinary capacity for violence. He's going to tear things to, something terrible could happen. He's controlled it the last few seasons. But I've seen him in games for Liverpool when it was the game when he bit the Chelsea defender, the Serbian guy, I forget his name. Ivanovic. He bit Ivanovic. And we were losing 2-0, 1-0, I forget what it was. It was at Anfield. I hate Chelsea. And we were losing. And at a certain point, Suarez just decided. He decided, you could see him, this would not stand. We would score. He just decided, and through an act of will, he changed the game, scored a goal, and then he bit Ivanovic and was sent off. And there's something about, a question that one is often asked is about violence in football. Yeah, football is violent. It's a violent physical game whether that's played by women or men, it's violent. It's about how that violence is organized, controlled, disciplined. Sure, symbolized, it's a symbolic violence, but still it's there. And sometimes very great players are very great players because there is that thing at the edge of something really quite monstrous, and also very attractive, because it's great when there's violence. The other side of this is when something violent happens in a game, we think, oh great, there's a fight,
Patricia, si me dejas preguntar, él es un gran hincha del fútbol.
Well, he's a great supporter. He says that he hates Chelsea. He's not the first one in doing that. But there's something, I'm an Athletic de Bilbao supporter. I've lived in Madrid for 30 years. There are people that say that, well, I'm that thing, that other thing. But the real football supporter, it doesn't matter how supporter he is, at least that's my case, we know to appreciate the good teams. We know how to appreciate the good players, and we know how to play tribute to those teams. I think that's important in football too. I mean, that idea that we are insensitive, we only live for our teams and we don't know how to look to the other teams, that's fake. No, at least that's my opinion. I'm an Athletic de Bilbao supporter. It's a small team, but I've admired Ajax from Amsterdam, Liverpool to... I remember the first final before winning the first Champions League. I watched the final. There was Liverpool against Newcastle, 3-0. There was Marky McDonald in Newcastle and John Toshak and Glenn Kegel in Liverpool, and I fell in love with that team. And I also fell in love with Saki's Milan and Guardiola's Barcelona and the 5th Champions League's Real Madrid. And last year's Real Madrid was amazing. Now it's very easy in social media, for example. There are many haters in social media. They categorize people, and these people can't even breathe. So I think that we have to say that the real football supporter knows how to understand what football is. I think that supporters are quite intelligent, and I think that they know how to adapt themselves, and they know what teams are making football evolve. And I'm totally against the idea of football being such a thing that makes us hate everything but our club. In my opinion, that's fake. I don't know if you think the same way.
No, completely. I completely agree. I completely agree. And let me give you an example. As a Liverpool fan, I'm meant to hate Manchester United.
Yeah.
You know? But since Liverpool last won the league in England, the Premier League now, Manchester United have won it 13 times. That's a fact, and that's not chance. That's because of Ferguson and what he built. It's because of signing Eric Cantona, who's someone else we could talk about, a philosopher, you know, Cantona, with a book of aphorisms and everything. You know, people when they come, what is it, what the press conference after he jumped into the crowd and nearly killed someone? You can find this on YouTube if you've not seen it. He's banned for 6 months, I forget how long it was.
Yeah, a lot of time.
Yeah, banned for a lot of time. There's this huge press conference. Cantona's going to speak. He comes in, hundreds of people, and he says in his preposterous French accent, you know, sometimes when the seagulls follow the trawler, they hope to catch fish. And he left at that point.
And everybody was thinking, what kind of...
That was it. He left at that. That's again, he knows, you know, Cantona knew when to stop as well. He knew when to stop. Players like that, you know.
Así que secretamente alguna vez has admirado al...
I know that secretly you've also admired Manchester United.
I admire Manchester United, yeah. I mean, so I think it's about your own gods, your own myths, your own heroes, and recognizing that the game can be played in a superior way by somebody else. So I think it's not about... I don't like monotheism. Right? I think things go wrong in the world when things become monotheistic, whether that's Judaism, Christianity or Islam. I'm against all three of those. I like the idea of people having local gods, which they passionately believe in, and they are their gods, and they're good gods because they're our gods, and these are our stories. But over there, they have gods too, and they're fine, they're gods. and we have to respect their gods. You can really hate that team, but still you respect it as perfecting the art which you're trying to develop in your own team in a superior way. And there's a moral lesson in that, I think, which is not something which is reflected in other areas of our life. And so, the worst thing about Saturday night, the Champions League final, was that, they were a better team.
Yeah.
That's why they won.
Next thing.
That's it.
Bueno, a ver, ¿quién es el...?
Okay, so we'll ask the first question. I think he asked Santiago what type of movies he watches when he goes to the cinema. I'm going to tell the truth. I mean, football is... it makes me be very, very, very rude. When I worked in El País, I had time to go to cinema, but now my rhythm of life is about going 4 days in a week to Barcelona, and to go there on Friday, to come back on Tuesday. After that, I had the privilege of watching Real Madrid in Bernabeu and watching teams, etc. And basically Real Madrid, or some games that was interesting to me, and Premier League, etc. But now you can ask me about Leganés because I know everything. You can ask me about Levante. I know everything because I have to watch them every single day. So when I come back to Madrid, there's Champions League or things like that. So unfortunately, I have to confess that during this last year I haven't gone to the theater very much. I saw this movie that this Hollywood stars don't die in Liverpool or something like that, but it was weird because it had been a long time since I last went to the cinema. So it means that you must be accustomed to that, to sit down there, to watch the movie, to be calmed down, etc. So you have to speak about cinema. I loved classical cinema. No, I mean, what movies did you watch when you were nervous? When you couldn't watch the movie. No, I didn't care about that. Any movie. I didn't want to have people around. I wanted to go into the room to have everything dark. I didn't care about the movie. I ate my nails watching the time, watching my watch. I was seeing if the game was over, etc. So I was quite nervous watching those movies. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but if the Athletic de Bilbao is able to do something great, and I have the chance of watching it because I don't have to go there, etc., I will go to the theater again, because something very curious has happened to me. As I am a journalist, I have to write many articles of Athletic de Bilbao and Real Madrid. I've seen Athletic de Bilbao losing many times here in Madrid. So I've written obituaries, so to speak. But the fact of being a journalist, and to be honest, that made me be far away from that relationship with the Athletic de Bilbao. When I write those reports, those articles, I take distance, but because to me it's a different team. I know that I'm able to do that because I have to do a professional job for the people that read me. I'm not doing something for myself. So I'm able to keep a distance, but if I don't have to work, if I don't have to analyze it professionally, I will go to the cinema, yeah. And to Simon, I would like to suggest him a title for the French edition. When I read the book, I thought that the book should be called Le Son de Bruit. And this is the question about the sound. In Spain, in terms of technology for both, when television came along, we started to watch football on TV, but we took the volume off and we used the radio as a soundtrack, so to speak. We still do that, and this is a question for Simon, because the chapter about sound is fascinating for me. And it's about this combination between television and radio. And the third question for you both is about the sense of tautologies. What happens in football after football? When coaches or players are asked of what has gone through and they say, well, football is football, or we've played 11 players against 11 players, or we've played 45 minutes, or we play to win.
The capacity for tautology and cliche in football is extraordinary, and what I particularly hate are the way in which players... I don't think players should be interviewed after games. I think it's a pointless activity. You know, what was going through your mind when you scored that goal? Well, if he was playing, nothing was going through his mind. He moves into space and scores, whatever, there's that. So I think it's a kind of... I think football discourse has got to catch up with what people are actually thinking. I think there's a huge, sophisticated football audience in the world, and they demand something better than they're getting from particularly the broadcast media, the way that football is still discussed on television. I've got ideas for how that could be changed. Noise, yeah, this is really... I mean, I live in New York, so I watch games on television, and I watch games at different times. So I watch most of my football in the morning, in the afternoon, which is a different experience, to say the least. But still, the noise is different. But then being in a stadium, I think there's that sense of the sensory overload of that. I find extraordinary, just being pulled into sound, right? Of watching. This is what Americans find very difficult. It's not the song, it's the complexity of the songs in football. Right? The songs are specific, they're complex, they go through variations, there are different songs for every game. And I think, for me, it's about sound, it's about the experience of a crowd, right? So I watch most of my games alone, or a lot of my games I watch alone, or with someone in the next room who's pretending that she wasn't having to over-listen to me screaming and whatever. But I think there's something about the experience of being lost in a crowd and lost in sound, and song, which is really special and powerful and also dangerous. I think that I remember from a child with my father was when things were really much more violent in England around football than they are now, of being we went to see Manchester United against Liverpool. I think we lost, and there was a lot of trouble outside the ground, and I remember being physically scared, right? There were fights, but also incredibly excited, right? I think there's something about football as a televised sport where that's lost, and so I should watch more live games, I guess. But yeah, the radio compensates a little. Yeah, and I understand here that radio is. I was talking to Jose Larum about the midnight radio shows in Spain, and that's a tradition which we don't have in the same way in the UK. Very interesting. There's something about nostalgic about radio as well. But I think the feeling of being what you said, Santiago, about you can watch Atletico Bilbao, and you can watch it with a distance you're doing a professional job. I think that's very important. On the other hand, this is what's pathetic and sad. I'll be sitting there at 7:30 in the morning in my place in Brooklyn, and I'll put Liverpool training clothes on, right? And I'll sit there on the bed watching at the early kickoff against, say, Everton or something, and then I find myself, at a certain point, if we score, if Salah scores, I'm jumping up and down on the ground, just jumping. And then you become, Jesus, what am I doing? So that sense of being lost in football, there's something about that which I think is really important, which goes back to childhood. It doesn't mean being a child again. It doesn't. But that sense of all of this, we are such proper, decent people with limits. Our bodies are here and they end, and we have the world is over there. That somehow in football, that all blurs and becomes something else. It becomes something much more primal and complex and kind of strange.
Sobre las tautologías no tengo mucho que decir.
About tautologies, I don't have many things to say about tautologies. I think that they are defensive cliches, but in the end, many of these cliches are great. Football is football. Football is, and that's great, because we don't know what that means. But we have the idea that the person who says that thinks that football is quite singular and they don't have any comparison to that. So I think it was Boskov. I think it was Vaharim Boskov. Yeah, I'll include it in the great statements in the world of football. I just wanted to say something about the book. Something with which I don't agree very much. And it's about the category of art that you give to defensive football. Well, I'm quite maniatic, and I've always hated Catenaccio, for example, and I know that Herrera's Inter changed football with that defensive football during the 60s, and this is why I celebrated that much when Ajax came along with that offensive football. But I think that real art belongs to offensive football. I think that the difficult thing, the generous things, and the creative things have to do with attacking in football. I think defensive football is reactive. To me, the most similar thing to art that I've seen in defensive football hasn't been Italian football. That has been about having defensive people and to be smart. I think that, defensive football is related to craft and offensive football is related to art. But I think that there was a moment with Arrigo Sacchi when Baresi broke the Italian tradition. He made the attack football a mess because they didn't know what to do about those defensive people that were playing depending on the coach criteria and depending on a player that moved that as if that was a piece of ballet. I saw something very creative there, but just opinions.
Okay. Because I just on a. And that seems to me, Arrigo Sacchi and Milan's a very interesting thing to think about because he was a shoe salesman.
Yeah.
He managed a minor club, wound up at Parma, and it was Berlusconi that brought him to Milan. What do we think about that? And how long was he coach at Milan? 3 seasons?
4 or 5.
4 or 5 seasons. Okay. He also stopped, right?
No. After he coached the Italian team and
that didn't work out
World Cup '94 and European '96.
Oh, sure, you're right. Yeah.
I think. Yeah. The last game was a defeat against Germany in Manchester. 3-0, I think.
You've got an encyclopedic knowledge of the game. It's impressive.
All right.
Sí, hola, buenas tardes.
Yes, hello. I don't know what you think about the new markets that emerge, like the US, China, Japan, that are starting to get players that are a little bit old. Because I have my wish, so to speak, or my dream, that they sought to take these players when they are at the best moment, so that the Spanish league can be competitive again, and it can have Zaragoza, Valencia, Athletic that are able to win the league from the beginning, and not to have this alleged best league in the world where we know that Madrid or Barcelona will win the league. And for Santiago Segurola, I think that you've forgotten about that Real Sociedad during the 80s that I'm sure that you fell in love with. Well, curiously, I've had better relationships with people from San Sebastian than from people from Bilbao, because I'm very critic with my team, as usually happens to many supporters. But in the case of Real Sociedad, I think that they've even had better players than Athletic de Bilbao. Well, they were a great team. In my opinion, they were extraordinaries. Well, I'm very sorry, we have to wrap up. I would have played an extra time, but just to end up, I'm sorry to tell you, but you won't see that, because unfortunately, although football is a global world, at least during the next 20 years, it will be absolutely focused on the old Europe. I mean, what the money and the media attention are, and there's a small group of European clubs that are increasingly further away from the other clubs in order to commit with a new championship that will be played by them, and where all these teams that you've mentioned, Zaragoza, Valencia, Real Sociedad, they won't have any chance of winning. Just the other way around, they will be further away. I think that this football is absolutely necessary so that Real Madrid, Barcelona, etc. can survive, at least now. Step by step, it will be less interesting because their role in football will be less important, so it will make no sense. To me, that would be tragic. If the English people don't save us, I think that one possibility is that English people really love their leagues, so they're so interested that Manchester United beats Liverpool or Burnley or Huddersfield. So the Premier League is bread and butter of the English football, so I would like to think that English people that are the ones that have more money will still be fascinated with their league and will refuse to participate in that kind of NBA that is about to happen. I wish that English people save us from that. So I'm terribly sorry, but we have to end up. You can buy the book just here, so that Simon signs it, and as he says in his book, there will be a next season, a tournament waiting for us, or a speech with two geniuses like Simon and Santi. Thank you very much.